All right, we are live. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist live stream, midweek live. So, welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Thank you, Scary Generation, sir. Thank you for upgrading. Appreciate you. Just a few quick items while I'm waiting for people to join us. There's this one. Paul's been around for a while. This is pretty much the only post he ever makes. I'm not sure how effective this would be. So good to see you, David. Yeah. So, I mean, prove the existence of God, prove the existence of the devil, and we might be able to have a conversation as to what their character qualities are. But you haven't got that far. So you blocked him. Okay. Yeah. I get it, Martin. I get it. He's not interested in a genuine conversation. That's kind of what we're looking for, is theists actually interested in a genuine conversation. That very, very rarely happens. So here we go. Today's topic is why some Christians leave their faith. And I'm going to use so yeah, it's probably true. That's probably true. And I felt that way at once upon a time. So, but what I'm using today is I found a survey that a Baptist organization did when they polled people of why they left the church and where they went. And it's not a large study, so it's not a scientific thing. It's more of a poll that they were doing internally with people that have left the faith, so to speak. I'll leave the link is in the description and you can look at the full article yourself. But I want to pull this up because what I see a lot of times is very typical of why people leave the faith. I hope everybody can see this. But so yeah, I want it. Yeah, Greg. Censorship isn't cool. I'm not usually a big supporter, but this is my channel, and what I'm interested in with theists is people interested in having a genuine dialogue, not somebody that's just going to preach at me, saying the same thing over and over again. So that's kind of what we do here, but I want to address that real quick. So here's a list that they came up with. This Baptist organization came up with their poll. Basically they probably gave everybody a form that said, okay, what are some of the reasons that you left the church, right? Well, why did you leave the Baptist church? Why did you leave? And I've actually, I actually think that this is pretty typical of stuff I used to see in the assemblies as well. There's other organizations I've looked at similar polls. And I want to get to this because it's a deconversion issue. A lot of people who come here are deconverted people. They're people that have left their faith, particularly Christianity, and they come find me, a deconverted pastor who's also trying to help people with deconversion. And we look at the reasons why we left the faith. And this is actually very typical of some of the results that I see. And in this particular case, the number one was LGBTQ issues. Now, that's not very well defined. I don't know if they left because of the treatment of LGBTQ by the Baptist Church, and a lot of fundamentalist denominations do have that problem, as they treat people outside of that, in that group very poorly. And so, especially if you have family members or something like that, I can see that as a very deep reason to leave. Other denominations are not as rough on that, so and they are very accepting of LGBTQ. So it might not fit everybody. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that did leave for this reason. They discover that they're LGBTQ, and so they leave the church because they know they won't be accepted. I, I do believe that is Michael Bell's reason for it. Yeah, yeah. There's many others that have left that come to this channel that they are LGBTQ, and that's why they left the church. I can see that as a very real reason. You're not going to get a lot of support in the church if you are LGBTQ, right? So it's like they're going to actually be kind of hostile. They'll always, they always have that lovely line of, I love, and so there's always that line of, hate the sin, but not the sinner kind of thing, but love the sinner. And that just doesn't go well with a lot of these people who say, this is just the way I am. And there's a lot of large truth to the fact that this is just the way they are, and they're not going to change. And so there's always that question of, so it's one of those things where you just have this problem with who a group of people is, and they're just not going to be, let's see, tuned in tight. My reason for leaving years ago is because I could figure out it was just not true. Why would that be on the list? I think that is the intellectual integrity part, which is a reason I would say that's why I left. In the end, it was intellectual integrity. I couldn't sit around believing in a myth anymore. I couldn't do that. I couldn't be part of something that I knew that wasn't real or rational. So there's that. Interestingly enough, I find it interesting that this is the third reason given. Of course, there's going to be theological answers on the other side of this, but intellectual integrity is definitely up there. If you notice these people probably have it there. If you add like pain and evil and the rational discussion of suffering and evil, I think that would fit in there as well. Notions of the afterlife, intellectually assessing heaven and hell are untrue. You go down this list, and I think there's a lot of things that could definitely be. So that's kind of the issue. That is kind of the issue for me. Behavior of believers is second on this particular list. I've seen that on several other lists. You'll find a lot of people leave the church because Christians don't act like Christians, or at least how Christians are perceived to be working. See, this is the thing. Same. I couldn't continue to teach something I knew wasn't true and just ignore the discrepancies all over the Bible, especially in the Gospels. That and divine hiddenness. Yeah. I'm looking at this list and I'm seeing like intellectual integrity, education might fit in there, pain and evil, scriptural issues. I know one of the atheist organizations back in the day did a poll of why you were an atheist, and a good chunk of them said the Bible. Okay, the Bible is just crap. So there's that aspect of it. So that's all part of that too. And I think a lot of us fall into that line. And apparently this is a reason why a lot of people leave the church altogether, is the intellectual integrity. Now, of course, that goes up against anything that Christians will tell you, because usually the reasons that they would list, I don't see up here in this list, I just wanted to sin. Or I'm denying God in my unrighteousness, or there's none of that stuff that a Christian assumes people leave their faith for. There's real legitimate reasons here that they give. Okay, so this is all the initial reason for leaving the church, right? It says initial. Okay, how many of them stay away because of some of these reasons? I think, how many of that is there? Okay, I mean, I'm looking at, yep. Um, I would put behavioral believers as my secondary reason. I think number one was intellectual integrity for me. Behavior believers probably was a good second. LGBTQ was there. Although my last church, I was very tolerant of LGBTQ. I kind of said, you know, there's probably plenty of LGBTQ people that have walked in the doors of this church and nobody ever knew. And I'm not going to treat them any different than anybody else. And I always took the stance as a Christian pastor that it's no worse than any other sin. But then now I'm an atheist and I don't think sin exists. So it's a made up concept. So there's that. Really, they're prejudice against your tuba playing? That's sad. I think, man, that man, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Not people not letting you play your tuba. That would be a good reason to leave. I'm trying to figure out where they'd fit on the list. Is that being abusive to tuba players? Could be. I don't know. I guess that could be. Let's see. It's all these people around me from different religions trying to sell me their magic elixir for sickness they can't demonstrate I have. Yeah, I think that goes along with like the intellectual integrity theology, afterlife thing. The whole made up thing of, you have sin and God gives you this magical cure to fix it in Jesus is the Christian message. The whole theological issue of God sacrificing himself to appease himself for the rules he himself created. That becomes a real intellectual problem for a lot of people. I think when I look at the reasons that a lot of people have left and over the years that I've seen, yeah, they're all on this list. They're all on the list. Feelings, I notice feelings is on the list. You could say LGBTQ, purity culture, but a lot of the criticism of Christianity is, oh, you just live for emotional reasons. Well, why are emotional reasons bad reasons for leaving? Okay, if they also line up with your rational reasons, what difference does that make? A lot of people stay in the church because of emotional reasons. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how it's okay to stay in, but not okay to leave. Yeah, I could see that, I guess. All right, Greg, I don't subscribe to any religion, but I don't think it's remarkable that any of mankind's attempts to conceptualize a creator would fall short and be inadequate. I doubt humans even have the capacity. Yeah, I mean, if you take a deistic view, I think that's probably a pretty typical deistic view that nobody really adequately describes God, and it makes him a real nebulous concept. I think we're just going to be, I guess I could see that. If indeed it does exist, yeah, exactly. Something like God, the whole omni thing, I think would be problematic to try to conceptualize. Yeah, it's not on the list though, and I think it should be on the list though. It's scary. I really do. They wouldn't let me play my tuba. At least it should be down here under the 1% category as other, and be the first example. They wouldn't let me play my tuba. Yeah, pretty much religion and bottle there. Yeah, so good to see you. But yeah, so I'm looking down this list, and the one I didn't understand, and maybe somebody I outgrew it, didn't make the list, captive. I don't know. Is it on there? I don't know. Maybe education had a hand in that. Maybe, possibly. The one I didn't understand was faith leadership, and maybe that's a Baptist thing. Um, maybe somebody can explain that one to me. But a lot of the others ones, like unanswered prayers, purity culture, those I understood. Mental health, us versus them culture. So, hey, Errol, good to see you. Um, uh, this is kind of why I'm doing this live stream, because I think people, when they deconvert, they don't get the emotions of it. I've been going through this for a long time, and I'm still seeing a therapist. So it's the getting over the lies. How bad did it hurt when you found out it was a lie? It shattered me. Took me a few years to even talk about it. I was so duped. Yep. For me, I was still in the pulpit when I realized it was bullshit. So I had to go to work. um, and it's still painful. Okay, when you realize that uh, something that you put so much trust in, and then all of a sudden it's shattered, it's gone, it's disappeared. And I really felt like it was mourning. I went through all the stages of mourning with it, like disbelief, and then anger, and then sadness. It really is very much like grieving, because you've invested all this time and emotion and yourself into it, and then it's all gone. So yeah, that's one of those things. So it I get that feeling very, very much. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is one you're giving an example of what I would call theological issues. I knew a lot of people who left the faith because God didn't make sense. Okay, the omni God didn't make sense. I've seen a lot of people that they come to this channel, they give that as the reason it just doesn't make sense anymore. And when you look at all some of this stuff, the afterlife, the purity culture, the lack of relevance, moral misalignment, there's just stuff that all fits in that it doesn't make any sense anymore. And I think that's one of the issues with coming out of it, is that suddenly it doesn't make any sense anymore. And you have this emotional downturn. And I'm still dealing with it. I was in the church for a long time, and of course my neurology got wrapped around it. And so unlearning behaviors that in your 50s is difficult. So I still struggle with things. It's one of those things that I have to deal with on a daily basis. So along with all the other things. Um, yeah, this is another one. Seeing the Genesis stories as myth was the last straw for me. They were my foundation. They turned to smoke and went away with my faith. I can't say I stopped being a creationist, but I was still a believer for a while. I think this is where some people's stories may differ. But I think what happens there is you start saying, okay, well, maybe it's an allegory, or maybe it's something like that. Just you begin to lose. You try to come up with some of the reason why Genesis is there, and then you realize that if it's not literally true, then Jesus makes a lot of false statements. Many other writers make false statements. They assume that it's true. The writer of First Timothy, when he gives his reasons why women shouldn't talk in church and should be under men's authority, literally talks about the Genesis story, Genesis 1 through 3, and takes it as literal in order to make his point. So you can't really interpret the New Testament correctly unless you're a literalist about the rest of the Bible. Yeah. The funny thing, Captive Dust, is I had the same problem from the time I finished seminary. Is my seminary and biblical Bible college education kind of put all these doubts in my head, because they didn't answer the questions that I had going in, and I still had a lot of questions, and they didn't do it. So you could say my religious education was the beginning of the end. Um, so there's that. Watered down answers. I got a Christian apologist. Don't cut it. One of my experiences with Christians apologists is my constant frustration with them, because as a believer, I could see their bullshit. Okay. I could also see where their argument wasn't convincing. And I was constantly frustrated with Christian apologetics because, and still am, because they keep doing the same stuff that isn't convincing even now. It's the same arguments. They've, put a new coat of paint on it, so to speak, but that's about it. So it's kind of one of those things. Um, and apologists just didn't cut it for me. They stopped being relevant, because I'm like, the reason I went into apologetics briefly was there's got to be a better argument out there. And after a couple of years, I'm like, there isn't a better argument out here. Okay. And so that was that. Look to the truth, more evidence against what I believe came to pass, and the theist in me just kind of drifted away without much fanfare. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. That happens to a lot of people. Fits is compatible with all current Scientology. The only mystery is the sentience. We don't know. Yeah, I mean, you could say that the universe is its own creator, I guess. So I guess that's that. Breaks my heart seeing people struggle to deconvert. I left as a little kid and then got into witchcraft, but I've been most of life without belief. Thank you that it breaks your heart, because it should. As somebody who was a Christian education pastor and did the indoctrination of kids, I can tell you I struggle with this as an adult, not just because of the deconverting aspect and losing something important, but some of the things I did still give me guilt, because I now realize how false it is. And yes, this is why former Pastor Ed goes to therapy, because I have to talk my way through that all the time. And so it's one of those things. It's why I started this channel, was to help people get through this. It's why deconversion is still one of the central aspects of what I do here. And that's because I don't like to see people get buffaloed by this stuff, and I try to get people out early of it. So it's one of those things that I am very passionate about, I guess. So as an adult who deconverted, I'm very passionate about it. So I guess I can say that that's because of that. So yeah, but I do thank you for your empathy. I appreciate that. So there's that. Yeah, I think this is one of those theological issues that I would see on this list, because even the arguments for the existence of God, like the theological arguments, the philosophical arguments for the existence of God, I think a lot of people get tripped up by them, because they think, oh, this should be smarter. There should be some smart answer to the question of God's existence, and there really isn't, because you end up basically realizing that all these arguments are fallacious, or they are logical fallacies. You could use them in a logic class, many of them, as an example of a logical fallacy. So there's that. So it's, when I look at this list, it's amazing how over the years I've seen people come to this channel and check off every single one of these boxes. If I put a box by every one of these reasons, I've had somebody check off every single one of them. And I would say it's almost kind of in that pattern. I mean, the bottom one here is church history. That does come up every once in a while, that the church hasn't been the great. So there's that aspect of it. So I don't know. The theology part for me wasn't as problematic as the apologetic proof. Okay, like, do you have evidence that the Gospels are written by who they say they are? No. I'll go into that again tomorrow in questionable witnesses as that series continues. I go into that every time because that's the point of the series. But it's the what evidence do you have for what the Bible says? Okay, that's the issue that came up so much with me. Um, so it's it, it's that aspect of it that I continue to struggle with, in the sense that I see so many people leaving the faith for so many different reasons. And some of them are emotional, some of them are intellectual. All of them are very deep seated, in the sense that it's a traumatic experience to lose your faith. Now it really depends on, as somebody said, you know, how somebody said, it's 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 so deep, it's so, it really depends on how long you were in it. For me, it was a really traumatic thing. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, this kind of ends a lot of the arguments. If gods or gods existed, we would all know it, as if it sits on a mountain, there are God or gods there, rather than needing arguments philosophically, when you can make a philosophical argument from almost anything. I've often talked about philosophy captive desk, in the sense that philosophy is very good at disproving things. It's not very good at proving things. For that, you usually need science or something else. But philosophy has a way of correcting thinking, and that's about its main good. Is that is kind of, are we thinking correctly about this, and is there anything flawed? And now you're with me, because I was a pastor for 20 years, um, taught this stuff, indoctrinated people, gave reasons for it, gave people a lot of false hope. It's very much like, realize, I, I liken it in my deconversion story to realizing that I was a snake oil salesman, thinking that I was actually selling something that was like medicine that was helping people out. You suddenly realize I'm selling something that actually harms people. And I think that's what, yeah, you're innocent of that in a certain sense, but once you get past it, it's harder and harder to get past it. So there's that. It's for me, I feel the same way as you do, Michael. It really get your sleep, use Jesus. Yeah. Uh, when you think about it, there's a reason why in some of my videos, you guys will see this, where I liken it to, how can I say this? It is very much like being a snake oil salesman. You're trying to initiate. You have all these problems in your life, and they're because of sin. Okay, you have this imaginary problem, sin. The Bible never proves that it empirically exists; it just asserts it. You have this sin problem. Whenever you disobey God, you have sin. So therefore, you need a cure, and the cure is Jesus dying on the cross to appease Himself, so that you can avoid what He's going to do to you if you don't accept Him. And at that point, the snake oil analogy ends, and it's more like the mafia boss sitting in front of you, extorting you. You don't have to take my protection, but kind of thing. So it's like that. Yeah. Um, yes, I got that from Dan Barker. That's a big part of my deconversion story. Is the last day I was a Christian, May 27th, 2015, I was preaching a message on sin from First Corinthians 5, I think, where I was talking about the effect of sin on the church. And then I was realizing something, that sin doesn't have any empirical evidence for it whatsoever. Sure, there's suffering. Sure, people make bad decisions, but what proof is there that those things violate the law of God in the world? If the Bible didn't say it, you wouldn't believe it, right? And so that's kind of, you know, kind of where it was at. And Dan Barker's quote about sin being an imaginary problem and Jesus being an imaginary solution was floating around in my head. And this is why I left the Christian faith. Is I prayed to God. I'm like, God, you got to show me how sin's empirically real, or I can't buy this stuff anymore. And so you end up, I preached the message, sat down, and it was that realized that Dan Barker was right. Okay. And boy, that was a moment for me. I had a really bad week that week. So there was that. Assistant pastor, minister of youth, so many sermons and Sunday school lessons I would take back and never teach. Me too. I started preaching when I was 16 years old, and did that in my church. And then I graduated to doing it more often. And of course, I went to Bible college, had to preach a lot. And then 4 churches and all that other stuff later. I don't know how many sermons I've preached to it. Some people have asked, do you have any of them on record so you could react to them now? As funny as that would be, I don't think I have any of that stuff left. I got rid of it all after I left. And part of me is kind of glad I did that. I don't want to hear myself doing that anymore. If all that remains of Ed Rabyd is the Rabyd Atheist channel left behind, then I will be satisfied with that. That works for me. So, yeah, so there's that. Yep. Yeah, when you get down, the gospel is more about protection. You're buying insurance against God, what he'll do to you. So there's that. Yes, his good news bit is really good. That is good. I'll have to watch that again. It's been a while. Yeah, that's true. It has no bearing on whether the existence of creator or not. Yeah, it's not really contingent. So, and that kind of removes the need for a creator, I guess, unless you want to talk about a creator being the universe and the way things are. So, there's that. Yeah, I am trying to help now. And I guess in a certain way, my experience allows me to help people. Like I get theists here all the time that want to talk about deconversion. Every once in a while, I get a very sincere seeker. And that's why I ask my mods to be very cautious about who they block at times, especially when we're first getting to know a theist, because they might be legit. So, so there's that. Did I miss your comment? Which one? Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. Mostly. I've forgiven myself mostly. Um, Part of the problem is I constantly wrestled, do I believe this or not, all my Christian life. And there was times I don't know if I did or didn't, and I should have known. I guess why I'm in therapy, Earl, is because I end up, I still end up struggling with that very issue. I guess there's a lot of self forgiveness issues in deconverting as a minister. Um, I did honestly believe it for a while. I struggled with it a good chunk of my ministry. Intentionally lying, well, gets problematic the last 2 years of my ministry because I was a flat out atheist preaching in the pulpit. But the nature of my messages changed completely because I was only using the Bible as a springboard to talk about other things that I felt were true. So I don't know. It's a hard call. That was a very stressful time for me because I'm not really good at lying. Okay, I suck at it, but the autistic masking probably helped pull some of that off. But I just don't know. At times, this is the problem. It's kind of we tend to look at belief or non-belief very black and white. You either believe or you don't. Sometimes that can be the same day, when you're deconverting. So, yeah, it's hard for me to talk about that particular part because I knew there was a certain point where I didn't believe in God anymore, and that becomes a real issue. It's the reason I walked away from faith is very similar to a lot of other people's. The problem is um, Daniel Dennett wrote the book Caught in the Pulpit. Yeah, that's what I was. Okay, I was definitely caught in the pulpit for a couple years there, 3 years total if you count the extra year I was a deist, trying to make it work. Maybe I can use this Christianity thing for good. Unfortunately, it's like the Ring of Power in Game of Thrones, or not in Game of Thrones, in Tolkien's world, Middle Earth. You know, you try to use it for good, but it can't be used for good in the end. So, yeah, until it doesn't, and it doesn't in a spectacular fashion, at least my experience. That's kind of how my ministry ended. Is the masking came off, and holy crap, did things go sour there quick. So, so but there's that. Yeah, caught behind the piano. Yep. Uh, Dan Barker was not only a preacher, but he was also he was also a musician. He used to sing songs. That's why he does a lot of things. Lemon stand, but I'd be selling real lemons. Okay, before I wasn't selling anything. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I look at the whole thing of why I left Christianity, and I look at some of this here in this list, and yeah, I can see it. It's a combination. I think the thing that people they're all looking for the what is the real one reason that people leave their faith, and it's like I don't think it's one. There's usually 200 things that are going on in your so yeah, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, he did write that song. Um, help write it. It's a Christian musical. Yeah. So I guess that's the issue. That's the issue. Yes, he does. And you know what? Take the money. Okay, just take the money. Um, but the reason I think he can't do anything about it is he's not the only one that owns the rights to that, and the other people that do are still Christians. So they want their money, so they have to give him the money too. So they can't just get rid of it. We can skip the lemonade. Let's just go vodka. Let's go vodka. Um, so I guess as I look at all these reasons why people leave Christianity, and in this particular case, this is a survey from a Baptist organization, but I literally um, have seen very similar lists to this. I find it interesting because I remember like the number one reason up here is LGBTQ, and I remember having a discussion. I think it was way back in my second church or my first. I can't remember. And I was having a discussion with one of the members, and they were talking about how their children had this very nuanced view of LGBTQ that they're they didn't have to. They could still love people that were LGBTQ, and they really tried to avoid the sin discussion altogether. And I thought that was a very interesting thing for young people to say. And now, 20 years later, I can see where that's going. A lot of people are just straight up leaving the church at this point because they're seeing the bigotry, they're seeing the prejudice against all that, and they're just done with it. Okay, they just don't want it. Oh, was he? Okay, 604 atheist. Okay, all right, yeah. Yeah, Dan still makes his rounds. I do notice that he's getting very, very, um, very shall we say, less energetic than he was. He's getting older, and I want to be kind to him because he was very instrumental in my deconversion. So I read a lot of him. People asked me what I was reading at the time that I was deconverting, and it was like I read Krauss's book, A Universe from Nothing, and discovered that that's not what he meant. Okay, that the book title doesn't match the contents of the book. I was reading God is Not Great. I was reading The God Delusion. I was reading a lot of atheists at the time I deconverted, and discovering that what apologists were saying about atheists and what atheists said about themselves were two different things. It's weird. Um, yeah, I mean, there are numbers here. This is one denomination's exit poll from the people that were leaving. So it kind of gives a, a partial thing. Um, but it is nice to see in numbers of people actually responding to something. I agree with you there. Everybody kind of just jumps on it, but these are the reasons that at least one denomination is seeing that people are leaving their denomination. Um, so there's that. I think so. Um, I I was kind of puzzled by that myself because the abuse number on here isn't that high. It's not even 3% of the respondents listed it. And I don't know, maybe it's because it's an internal poll and they're not trying to, I don't know, necessarily give their former church, the people they love and care for instance, a black eye. But yeah, I'm surprised that isn't higher in a lot of denominational cases. I think I saw one of the Catholic Church many years ago, though that was much higher as why people were leaving the Catholic Church. So that was interesting for them. Yes, I saw this today. Prophet Azad is also changing his channel. He's leaving being Prophet Azad and going to something else. Big moment for a lot of us. I remember listening to Prophet Azad many years ago, and that was one of the ways I got through. So, um, yeah, yeah. I haven't. No, I haven't. I need to do an episode stat. Okay. I guess I can work it out. I'll have to. I Chris very briefly saw that, so it's not a channel I'm familiar with as much. There's so many of us out here in the sphere now, so it's hard. Um, it is hard for victims to admit their abuse. Getting back to the earlier discussion, um, so there's that. I think that's kind of one of those things where it might be a low respondents because people don't like to talk about that, and maybe the reason they put abuse is they are a victim. So there's that. Let's see, really? Okay. uh, Pet afterlife. Oh yeah, it was so hard to deal with pets as a minister. It really was. Where's my dog going? Things like that. So I don't know. It's also okay. All right. I will check him out. Maybe give him a contact email. We'll see what happens. But yeah, if it's a good time, I'm glad I'm down. I have a weird schedule, as everybody knows. I work at night and I'm sleep during the day, and I do this usually a little bit after I get up. So I do my videos and stuff, and then go chill and then go to work. But so very interesting. If he does deconversion stories, I'm always happy to tell my story. Um, because I think of all the tools that we that have deconverted have, telling our story is probably the most powerful one. I think it's peas and carrots, huh? Okay. All right. All right. All good dogs go to heaven, but none of us. Me, I'm surprised there's not a religion for that, David. I'm surprised. I really am surprised that there's not this religion, because everybody's like reacting to Martin here. Didn't anybody read Pet Cemetery? Um, uh, I don't know. I've been on a lot of podcasts and stuff, and it's whatever people give me. Um, I'm trying to make money here, so that's my bread and butter. So it's like, but yeah, yeah. I am really surprised. Do souls even exist? Is a question atheists ask and often say no. Um, so there's as much proof for the human being having a soul as there is for a God. So I think that's kind of one of the things you dump early in your deconversion is all these other supernatural, superstitious beliefs. Um, Durante Lamar does this a lot, where he talks about how it's mostly superstition that's still the problem. We have superstitious beliefs that we can't verify, and so I would argue we codify them into religions. But he's right about that. We have these beliefs that you know, as long as the animal has more than instincts. I don't know too many. What would qualify? I want qualifications, Martin. I want qualifications. Death assurance. Yeah. I Thing is, asshole, that is one of the superstitious beliefs I think that religions thrive on. Is we we are assured of our death, and people want a way to get out of it. Okay, we're absolutely assured that one thing is going to happen to all of us, and that is we are going to die. That and some government is going to tax us. Um, but those two things. But it's like there's no evidence for any of that. So we hold on to superstitious beliefs because we want something else to be true. Yeah, yeah, I would say that that's probably true. I mean, I don't know why you'd be exclusive. It's one of the theological issues that I used to rub in people's faces when I was having theological discussions. Well, why do we say this and that? And of course, they run to Genesis, and then it's like, okay, but what if that's not true? Kind of thing. That thing. Yep. That's why we definitely a real us concept. We're all going to be resurrected. We're all part of a special group. We're all going to go to heaven, and all the people we don't like and disagree with are going to hell. Big draw for anybody who's like that. It's an interesting thought, yeah, that this is what kept a lot of us. I can say that this was probably the deepest emotional reason that kept me in the faith for so long, is the desire to see my dad after he died. Was definitely a heartstring thing. And what kept me in the faith was the emotional reasons. Intellectually, I think I was gone long before I actually left. It was just too difficult to maintain the theology and the Bible and the inconsistencies about God and things like that. So that kind of ended it for me. But the emotional reasons for staying in the faith, wanting to see people that I cared about that had died, wanting to um, just have a chance to talk to certain people in history. There's that emotional bond, of people that we have with humans to humans. And yep, that's what we're dealing with. Is how do we? Uh, so there's that. Uh, yeah. Well, I would argue that superstitions are more inherent than religion. I think Durante Lamar is right about that. Okay, I think he's onto something there. That we all have these superstitious beliefs that we believe about things, and then we codify them into religions. but I would say that Christians are very superstitious. I mean, I've lost track of the number of theists that have come here and quoted Bible verses at me as if they're magic spells that are going to just change my non-belief into belief. Okay, there's this belief in this magical power of the Holy Spirit. There's this, which gets really nebulous when you're a Pentecostal. Trust me on that one. Also, you just can't, you can't disprove what people superstitiously believe. Most of the problem with superstition is it's just not falsifiable. And every religion has unfalsifiable beliefs, which is their problem. So if they were falsifiable and couldn't be falsified, it'd be a different story. Yes, they get punished. I mean, thanks, Triple E. One of the things that kept me Christian was seeing my family too. Yeah, I think it's a big reason. I actually had it mentioned by one of the women atheists that comes to this channel, that she said that one of the reasons she heard, and this is just her talking, but women tend to hold on to belief pretty hard, especially if they're mothers, because they can't bear the thought of not seeing their children again. So yeah, it is. I think it's a good discussion point to have with people in a live stream like this, because other people are watching. And when you point out to these guys that they're just as superstitious as the people they say follow Satan, I think that's, yes, they do. There's still that superstitious belief that, see, there's another superstitious belief, though, that God causes calamity to those who oppose him. There's that. Maybe. But then is it a soul as defined by religions? Okay, and then wouldn't we be just single beings that are all this stuff? I think that's that. So I don't know. I disagree with that. There are many animals that are social and have moral social behavior that's been well documented. It's not just the great apes either. Like flocks of birds, like crows, for instance, have moral behavior. There's certain things that they get yelled at for technically if they do it wrong. There's many social species that are now documented to have a form of morality, so it's there. So it's not just humans. Okay, so there's that. I have not, but I will now. I know this about the religious landscape of the world. Most people still believe in something. The religion is alive and well. Okay, if you're looking for atheism in mass, it's usually in Western Europe and in the United States, which is influenced by Western ideals from Europe. Australia, I think, has a lot. You can verify that for me. Um, and but yeah, there's atheism is still the rarity. Religion is still very dominant around the world, and unfortunately, a lot of people make decisions based on their beliefs, which they can't verify. And I think that's the inherent danger. Yeah, like to make my point, Martin says, yeah, in social species, morality is an evolutionary advantage. I know it brings morality way down from this spiritual plane that a lot of people want to put it on, but it has a very practical advantage. You also have, uh, yeah, I mean, the thing about it is language came from somewhere. The real problem with humans developing languages now, it's easy for us to choke on things, so I saw that too. Yeah, I mean, you can see other animals helping other animals out. Where does that come from if not morality? Is that not a moral equation? Um, I think that's one of the things that I find fascinating about studying evolution now is the evolution of moral systems within different species and how they work depending on that species. Um, uh, we don't know that. Okay, you don't know what these animals are thinking, but morality has everything to do with behavior. Okay, it's all about how we behave towards each other. You can't separate morality from behavior. It's one and the same. Um, it's all the same to me. Mm, yeah. Okay. I will take a look, Bren. You usually give me good stuff, so I will look at the report. Um, religious landscape support. I will do that. Hey, Tux. Um, I would argue that morality is rational. Okay, it is rational, whether it's evolutionary behavior or not. It has a rational end. Hey, it's Tux. Welcome, Tux. Good to see you. About to sign off in about 5 minutes. I only have about an hour time here today, and I got other things I got to get done. Um, so there's that. Uh, Honestly, Brent, I don't know if I got time for that right now. I will. Can you send me the link to Messenger and Facebook, and I will take a look at it. It might be a good subject for a stream. I'd rather do a whole stream on it and get into it, but I'm running out of time because I got other things I got to do today, including get some of the work on the video for tomorrow done. So, okay. So there's that. Um, so, yeah, I think they suffer trauma. Um, there's definitely some moral advantages. The real fascinating thing to me, though, was how this idea of morality might just be inherent to a lot of living beings in a certain respect. I know that some biologists that have been studying botany have noticed some empathic behavior between plants as well. So, like they cover for each other, or like when one of them's damaged. Um, yes, Earl has a blog. I'm going to promote it right now, and she does cause a ruckus with it. If you want a ruckus, then there you go. Thank you, Bren. Appreciate that. Always appreciate your work. You've been very helpful to me. Thank you. To all my mods, I want to give you a shout out. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all have this ability to kind of shape this community to be a little bit what you want. And I think all of us have all of us have gotten to the point where we want a community where we can talk openly about deconversion without somebody preaching at us, and we want all this other stuff. So thanks for that. Aw, you're welcome, Earl. You've been very kind to me, and I try to be kind to you. So thank you. Um, but yeah, go over to I Killed Earl's blog, and you can be part of the ruckus. So yeah, yeah, we can block empathy purposely, and I think you also see that in animals too. I think sometimes you see them, but I got to survive, and so they take off. All right, so we said donuts. I don't know. I, buy your own donut before you come on. Yeah, so you can always buy your own donuts. I know it's not the same. I like it when work gives us donuts. Gives me an excuse to eat them. Otherwise, I don't really have an excuse to eat them. Um, yeah, I had fun tonight, guys. I do have to run. I've got about 6 other things I need to do before I take off for work. So thank you very much for showing up tonight. I appreciate all of you. I think an hour is going to be a little bit better than the half hour I put, because we can actually get some discussion going and all that. So thank you very much for all of you stopping by. I would really appreciate it if you would like the video or the stream before you leave. Comment below, get it noticed a little bit. I'm hoping to maybe cut some of this out for a video maybe next week. I think those kind of rewind kind of videos will appear early in the morning, and they'll be a lot shorter than most. I just want to make a few basic points. So thanks for all of you, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd appreciate that. If you're thinking about membership, do that. Appreciate every way you guys support me. Thank you to all my members. I've had some very generous support of late, so thank you all. And more than that, the kind words from a lot of you have been very good for me as I've been struggling mentally for the last week and a half or so. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of that. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure you're taking all your time, your money, your opportunities, giving them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.